Welcome to the Delegates Lounge. Pull up a chair. I'm Alex Tarquinio, a journalist based at the United Nations here in New York City, and your MC for this podcast, featuring some of the most influential minds in the world today. Settle in for some riveting tete-a-tete, available wherever you listen to podcasts. Welcome back to the Delegates Lounge podcast. We're continuing our coverage of the United Nations High-Level Week. You can find our video reports now on our brand new YouTube channel, and we will continue to publish our audio podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the usual podcast platforms. In this episode, we're privileged to bring you our conversation with the Foreign Minister of Estonia, Margus Tsahkna. Minister Tsahkna has been in that role since 2023, having served previously as his country's Minister of Defense and Minister of Social Protection. We held a critical conversation delving into Russia's incursions on NATO's eastern flank and the recent creation of NATO's Operation Baltic Sentry. That led to a broader discussion of the challenges on NATO's eastern flank. Looking beyond the immediate threats, we also delved into security guarantees for Ukraine after the conclusion of Russia's invasion, and the practicalities of releasing Russian frozen assets in Europe in the aid of Kyiv. Finally, as we're doing with all of our guests this week, we discussed the challenges facing the United Nations itself amid a growing fiscal crisis and questions about the organization's future. Minister Tsahkna shared his perspective on these matters. Here's our conversation. Mr. Minister, thank you for once again joining us in the Delegates Lounge.
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
And I should mention to our listeners, now watchers, because we're also on YouTube, but if you were listening last year on Apple Podcasts, they would have heard our conversation at last year's UN High-Level Week. Much has changed. A year ago, we were talking about the Pact of the Future. Now we're talking about major changes to the UN and possibly some efficiencies and downsizing. I know many delegates were waiting with bated breath for the speech by the U.S. President this morning to give perhaps some direction on what the vision for multilateralism is and for the United Nations. What is your view about the direction, and did you hear anything so far today that gives you any confidence you understand the direction the organization is going in?
You mean United Nations?
Yes, the United Nations.
I think the United Nations are going one way, and then there is a President Trump speech when mainly he was talking about what he's doing, about America first, to be honest, about business. But there are it was really very too many topics to comment at what was, one thing or the other thing. I was pretty satisfied about his criticism about Putin and Russia, that he would like to have a peace. Trump, and he was thinking that it is the most easiest thing, but actually, unfortunately, not. And actually, this is exactly what we knew already a year ago. And but of course, criticism about United Nations, it was there, but also that United Nations should have a part in his plans about the world. So, but let's see. I think that United Nations is very important right now, General Assembly mainly, because the Security Council sometimes is not able to work because the aggressor, as Russia is a part of that, as a permanent member and having the veto vote. But we as in Estonia, we called first time ever after 34 years of membership of United Nations yesterday, the Security Council, which was very straightforward. And US was there in a very strong position with the ambassador, very fresh.
Well, in fact, that was the ambassador's, not just very fresh, that was his very first meeting, which was very symbolic. He is considered to be more hawkish on Russia, perhaps, than other members of President Trump's cabinet, to be honest. And, he was there. That was his first meeting. He was only presented his credentials the day before. You did call that meeting. First of all, did you feel satisfied with the statements that were made? There were a lot of direct statements made to the Russian delegation.
Also, there are pictures of these fighter jets, and it is very clear that these fighter jets, they carried as well missiles. All of them, they carried missiles, and they were combat-ready planes. And you can see from here as well, Russian representatives, that these are the photos which really were taken during this heavy violation of NATO and Estonian airspace. So what I want to say, that violation is crystal clear, and Russia is lying again, as it has been lied before several times. We remember the occupation of Georgia, 2008, 2014, Crimea, 2022, aggression against Ukraine.
Did you feel satisfied with the outcome of that meeting?
I was very satisfied. First thing that more than 50 countries joined this declaration, what we adopted before, and we published that as a press statement. And also then, it was not surprising that Russia said many things, that it never happened, this violation of the Estonian airspace. For listeners as well, it happened in last Friday. We got 3 fighter jets in to Estonian and NATO airspace, longest time ever, 12 minutes. They were heavily equipped with missiles, so we called Security Council, but also Article 4 consultations for today, which were in Brussels right now in the morning.
You've anticipated my next question on, do you think that
but
you've
about
demanded
the
Article 4, or you've invoked that, do you feel they've done enough?
Coming back to the Security Council, of course, we didn't even ask any kind of measures right now. But it was mainly a political statement, and also to show the global south and globally as well that this is not the matter which is concerning us as Estonia or in Europe, that Russia is now testing as well NATO, which is very dangerous path, but also it's a question about territorial integrity matters and questions, which is very common for everybody here today, this week. All the leaders are here. So it got lots of attention, and also for these countries who are dealing with Russia, because they're far away, they're just, economically having relations, and politically, Putin is talking about peace. They believe that, but actually if Putin is talking about peace, he means more war. So for that meaning, it was very, very clear messages, and also U.S. participation was very important, and new ambassador Walt said very clearly that Article 5 will be there. U.S. is committed to protecting its allies, and for us it was really important back home. I got a response now from Estonia and from the region and from Europe as well. We decided in the beginning of 90s, after regaining our independence, that we will never be alone again as we were in 1930s and 40s. And this message really touched our people. And Article 4, yes, we are satisfied with that as well, because first time NATO in our region, we had this kind of situation when 3 fighters came into the NATO airspace and violated it. 12 minutes, it's more than 100 kilometers inside the NATO. And also the air patrol mission went up. They were ready to act as a NATO, if there is a need, we shoot them down, but there was no direct immediate threat to us. But NATO worked well. But also today, this Article 4 consultations, the unity is something we need to show to Putin. Because one reason why Putin is being too provocative and also testing us is to test whether we are first able to act, and the second is how united we are. Because he's playing with Trump, he's playing Europe against Trump and Trump against Europe and so on, but in that regard, NATO is working perfectly. And as well, we discussed this mission we called after the heavy attacks just a week before against Poland with 19 drones, which were shot down mostly. Eastern Sentry, which is a very practical tool to increase the capabilities on the eastern flank, and there will be more capabilities, air defense and readiness and deterrence for the next future. And this is now on military planning. The political decision was made today. So I'm satisfied as a Foreign Minister of Estonia with these messages, reactions, and also the plans, what we now decided.
Well, it sounds like you're very satisfied at the level of NATO, There's the Eastern Sentry, which is in response to the drone incursions in Poland and Romania. There was already Baltic Sentry. But turning to Ukraine, Estonia has long been an advocate of giving the frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. You've actually made changes in your legislature and the law. What advice do you have for those European countries who are considering similar measures, but perhaps are not as far along that road?
I felt that we were very alone like 3 years ago, but now things are moving because more and more governments understands that Russia is continuing the war. We need to finance Ukraine, and more taxpayers asking the rightful question why we need to pay if you have we have actually the Russian frozen assets in Europe like 230 billion. It's a lot of money, and as well politically. I think that Putin is playing now with Trump, but at the same time is waging more war. And as well, from U.S. side, there are clear signs that let's use Russian frozen assets. But of course, main assets, central bank assets, they are in Europe. And we are pushing heavily. And now we have more and more understanding in Europe as well. The President von der Leyen, just a week ago with her speech, said that Europe must find a way how to use the Russian frozen assets. So these things are moving well, but not good enough. So in Estonian position, we would like to confiscate them and also give them to Ukraine. But if we find any other solution to keep the assets and also use them at the same time as a guarantee or the loan and whatever to Ukraine, it will be the solution. But also it all works together with the sanction packages and more pressure. Now we adopt very soon the 19th package of the sanctions already in Europe. And we hope as well that President Trump is not today as well in the speech said that he's ready to do, but Europe must do more. But we have done a lot already, and we do more. If U.S. is stepping in as well with a full-scale sanctions as a package in the Senate, the Graham package consists. So I think that Putin will be in trouble because his economical figures are very bad. And he has not gained any strategic breakthrough on the battlefield. Any. Just moving maybe 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, but no strategic breakthrough. Within a year, as we talked a year ago, more people are dead, more people are dead, but no success. And also, on political level, now he's after NATO testings. But I think that it's a huge mistake. So he will be more isolated again. But at the same time, the meeting in Alaska, Trump brought him out with a goodwill to start the peace negotiations and so on. Putin is just playing and also waging more war, but he's out from isolation. And China and India, and they're more close than ever before. So many things to solve. But frozen assets, yeah, we can take them, and we are moving in the right direction.
Right. Another question on Ukraine. Essentially guarding the peace whenever we do get to this point. It's difficult to imagine UN-mandated peacekeepers, given Russia's veto on the Security Council. Russia's also, of course, stated their opposition to NATO peacekeepers. But what can NATO do? And do you think that the NATO response thus far has been adequate? The European and NATO countries that have said that they are willing to send troops to Ukraine in that instance.
Estonia's position is clear, and it will continue like this. The best security guarantee for Ukraine, but also for us in the region, is the full membership for Ukraine to NATO, with all these responsibilities, and the other way around, because Ukraine has now the largest active military power in Europe with lots of experience with Russia. So we need their guarantees as well to us, be honest, in real life. But in reality, of course, NATO is not jumping in, but now we are putting together this coalition of the willing about the military capabilities. Estonia, as a small country, but also a bordering country, we took Eliso as well, and we said already in spring that we are able to send pretty remarkable size of military capabilities and real troops, boots on the ground to Ukraine if the ceasefire is coming, if the conditions are there, the others are doing the same. Because one or the other way around, Europe and also together with US, we must put the skin in the game if we give any kind of guarantees. We cannot just repeat these Minsk agreements, what we had. So this is the reality. And that's we need as well the US backup, at least, not even maybe the boots on the ground presence. And that is something we need to understand to keep the peace there. It's not the peacekeeping. Peacekeeping is totally different mission. We are talking about skin in the game Article 5 principle. We need to understand as well that if we give this kind of guarantees, then we must be ready to fight as well. And this is the only way to keep the peace.
So real world on the ground show of force,
Absolutely.
not a piece of paper, not the Minsk.
It doesn't work because we know exactly that Putin will continue. Even the ceasefire is coming and there is no solid security guarantees, what I was talking about. He will continue and he will come again. And that's, we need to understand that Ukraine is in Europe. Ukraine is not somewhere else. So, yes. Probably we need to stop.
Yeah, but thank you so much.
Thank you. I had an opportunity. One thing is
I'm
that
glad. I really wanted to get that.
Putin is stealing our words. You know, we are talking about peace, and now he's talking about peace, and this is actually war. We're talking about security guarantees. Now he's talking about security guarantees, and it means about security guarantees that he's giving the security guarantees with China, Brazil, and so on. And these are not security guarantees. So he's a good, how to say, thief. He's like, stealing
The
stuff.
irony, he's talking about security guarantees. He's saying, he's happy to talk to Zelensky if he comes to Moscow.
Yep.
I mean, the irony is...
Please come to Moscow. I secure your... Okay.
We should comment that these incursions in your airspace are far from the first, but they are probing, and each time spending a little more time or extending it in that way. But when you go to the Security Council, you still are confronted with the Russian veto. I mean, is there anything you can do, or how can you approach the United Nations to get around the Russian veto?
It's already a very long story, and I remember when I was a student and everybody wanted to reform the Security Council, and now it's very practical concern as well, because Russia is waging the war already fourth year, and being the member of Security Council is actually, working totally against these principles and the United Nations Charter, and also China and many other countries. So I think that UN has lost these capabilities to be decisive and also having the very concrete missions or measurements, to solve one or the other military conflict. We have more than 60 military conflicts now in the world. It's more than ever after the Second World War, and the United Nations was called and founded in 1945, just after the Second World War, where the balance of powers were presented in the Security Council with the permanent members. And it's obvious that this balance is now in a totally different point. But UN Security Council is not reformed. So that's our concern. We need to reform. We need to ask more different countries join from different geographical locations. But also we need to review the veto right. This is very important. If you are an aggressive country, which is actually a decision of the Security Council, not the Security Council, but the General Assembly, and then you have a special rights to block everything. So there is no logic, and it can't work. But I don't believe as well that we are able to change this, because finally the Security Council will decide the change and reform about the Security Council, and this is nonsense. That's why
that is a conundrum, unless many people have looked at it, because obviously more than 140 countries voted in support of Ukraine and believed that Russia was the aggressor.
That's why I believe that actually General Assembly will play a more practical roles, and then the coalition of the willings between different countries. This is the way, unfortunately. And the question for the long run is whether United Nations, as it was built in 1945, will continue like this. Is this kind of world order we agreed to in 45 will continue at all? Or the world will be very much divided between the democracies and non-democracies and more wars. So this is the game, and it's very dangerous. It's like a domino effect. We're not talking about Russian aggression against Ukraine here in United Nations only because of Ukraine. But many others are taking the lead if they see that you can actually change the borders using military force. And that's very dangerous path. And that's why multilateralism is really, really important in practical life. It's not theoretical anymore. This is our concern.
Right. Well, I think we see the issues at the United Nations, and of course the United Nations is also going through a deep soul-searching process. There's a fiscal crisis. The United States in particular has stopped funding, making many payments, and is also, in fact, getting out of some programs. Do you think that the United Nations needs to focus more on its core original mission of peace and security, or is it really Security Council reform and the veto that is standing in the way?
It's all together, because if Security Council is out of order, so it hits all the other institutions as well under the United Nations. But also this funding question is very critical. And today as well, President Trump said in a speech, but in very cynical ways, in the meaning we're talking about the building, the building of United Nations as much as it costs, and this is like the example how much actually UN is wasting money. But I'm in a position as well that, of course, United Nations should look into that, how bureaucratical all this mechanism is. How can we use this money more proper way or more efficiently? And Estonia is doing our part here. We have proposed as well digital solutions. We're working very closely with the humanitarian organizations, Red Cross, how to deliver more efficiently, this aid to the people who need. Yeah, absolutely. But it's not actually solving the problem that funding is really, really lacking globally. Not the only from US side, which is very critical, but also, if you see the other countries globally, though economy is not doing well. It's hard to explain actually why we support United Nations like broadly. People ask exactly where my money is going and what is the problem. And we see more disaster in the world. We see very, very critical moment. Humanitarian catastrophe. People are dying. Children are dying. So I don't know what is the solution.
Is the solution, though, reform of the United Nations itself, or looking to other institutions? We spoke about NATO. Of course, NATO is a defensive alliance. It's not really analogous. There's the European Union and other regional organizations. Do they perhaps need to take on some of the role of what you feel is lacking at the UN?
NATO is investing now heavily to defense, and this is
which is the peace and security
absolutely.
Portion.
And also taking more responsibility on different regions. I see the cooperation as well, this Indo-Pacific region and so on. But of course, in European Union, we are really thinking and now making the plans how Europe can jump in more actively, because Europe has been spreading money as well, maybe too generously, without controlling where this money is going, how efficiently actually this money has been used on humanitarian ways, because European Union has been through the decades the largest donor for Africa, for Palestine and so on, and now we see the results. So I think that European Union, first thing, we have lots of money, but the second, actually, we need to reform our programs as well. So we cannot, of course, take all the responsibilities that US had, but we can do more and more efficiently. And these plans are now under consideration, because we are going to have the next budget period pretty soon. But I think that this is a global question much more. And also investments. I think that European Union is now reviewing the different programs, not just giving money for economical development, but also this global gateway program, which is actually based on like a private sector investment. So it's much more like investments and developments, not just sharing the money. So, but it takes time. At the same time, we have lots of conflicts. People are just dying and starving, and I don't know what will be the problem. So
this is where the two sides, actually, the humanitarian relief and the peace and security, dovetail, because of the weaknesses on the Security Council, the inability to do anything about the Ukraine war. NATO has now pledged to go to 5% of GDP. That doesn't sound like a lot when you're in Estonia and you're already there, but for some countries, that's a big increase. And they're having to find the money from somewhere, and it's often coming from their support for humanitarian aid, because they can't cut back at home. They need to spend more on defense. So Estonia, who's already paying these high levels of defense, how would you advise them to find this balance between self-defense and some of the other traditional roles that the UN has had, such as humanitarian?
It's hard to explain, really, even in Estonia. So our 5.4% next year will hit us heavily. We just finished our next year budget negotiations, so we have been increasing taxes, and our taxpayers asking exactly why we need to pay so much. They understand why we invest in defense. This is like 90% of support. We need to do it. Also, we have education, we have social systems, we have all the other things. We have pensioners as all the other countries and governments. We are supporting heavily Ukraine, We support like 0.35% of our GDP military support to Ukraine right now. And no one is asking this, why we do that. And then if we say that actually now we are sending some kind of money to United Nations, whatever organization, it's people asking, okay, let's do it, but we want to see where the money is going. And these figures nominally, they are not so big. So I think that the same problem is everywhere. So we need to be more transparent and be able as well to explain our taxpayers where the money is going. And as well about defense. Most of the big countries, if they heavily invest in defense, most of this money goes back to their defense industry. In Estonia and small countries, most of this money goes out from our economy. To US, to Germany, to France, wherever, because our production capabilities are not there. So our economy is actually suffering even more. And we take the first hit if Russia is aggressive on the border as Baltics and Poland and Finland and some others. So this is not equal thing. And then at the same time, if we do everything to protect Europe and NATO and also support Ukraine, and then we were asked that, but why you're not spending money for humanitarian crises as much? So this is not honest business, but we do anyways. So that's why I think many different governments on different locations, they need to explain that because we are democracies. Finally, our people are voting. And we won't want to be finding ourselves in a position that we are not supporting these humanitarian missions. We do a lot. But in Estonia, a good thing is that people still remember in their families how it was to be refugee. You can find Estonians all over the world because of the Second World War atrocities and the Soviet occupation. We lost every fifth of our people. So in Estonia, it's much more easy to explain. But some other countries, they can't remember anymore, or maybe they didn't have this kind of stories. So it's hard.
Well, that's an excellent point to end on. You've given our listeners and now viewers a lot to think about, particularly the difference between the sacrifices that you have to make in Estonia relative to other NATO countries. So thank you so much once again for joining us in the Delegates Lounge.
Thank you very much, but I see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not hopefully the train which is coming, but it's the sun. So
yes, let's hope it's a nice sunny day like it is here in New York.
Thank you.
Thank you.